Welcome to Now Serving a Site of Therapy, a client's introductory guide into the therapeutic world. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. To schedule a therapy appointment, call us at 650-223-5065. For more information on this and other related topics, check out our blog at isotherapy.com, where you can also contact us through our website. I'm your host, Dalton Huckaby, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm grateful you joined me.
One of the things too with the arts programs that I've been fortunate enough to launch and or lead is witnessing the connections within communities that take place. One of the biggest hurdles for the people that we serve is isolation. And that can come through in so many different ways. It's a lack of transportation often. It's discrimination. It's fear, people not understanding, not wanting to say the wrong thing. Oftentimes it can come from a good place, but the end result is still isolation. It's a story that I've shared several times throughout my career. It was actually the first arts exhibition that I set up for participants that I was supporting in an arts class. We were at the Phoenix Center for the Arts. And anytime I set up an exhibition, I try to step back and sort of melt into the wall. I like to see what people are seeing without a third-party perspective, hear what people are saying. And a couple came in, and it sticks with me, always will probably. A couple came in, took a look at the artwork, took a look at the organization artist statement, as well as some of the individual artist statements. And the woman said to the man that she was with, "I can't believe people like this can make such beautiful art." And while that was an incredibly frustrating and ableist statement to overhear, I forced myself to reframe it because being angry about it isn't going to solve anything. So I tried to find some positivity in it, and I tried to get a lesson out of it. And the lesson that I took, and it's kind of helped ground me and guide me in my career, is that the arts are such a natural way to build connection across disparate communities that might otherwise not have any exposure to each other. So that woman, for example, I wish I could find her and have a conversation with her now. She walked in not thinking that people with disabilities can make beautiful art. She walked out knowing that people with disabilities can make beautiful art. How did that small tweak potentially change her perspective when she's out at the grocery store and sees someone with an intellectual or developmental disability moving forward? If she has a child with Down syndrome, what is her perspective going to be like different thanks to that art exhibition that her and her partner came to? So beyond some of the more tangible fine gross motor skill development, chaining of events, things like that, I'm really excited to dive in with our participants and utilize the arts as a way for them to express themselves on an individual level, but also serve as advocates for the broader community and make those connections.
I love this because what's coming to mind for me is, especially since you're kind of, if we're talking about, for example, mostly working with adults or even with kiddos, right, who might be experiencing what would you call like the, it's like I don't know if they would be like, what do you call it, like ostracized or maybe even bullied, right? Or like they're a vulnerable population, right? And so, especially if they're again, you can still meet them where they're at if they're experiencing these things, right? Despite the age. And yet I can't help but think that based on those experiences that they're receiving, that they then might have some like internalizing messages about themselves, perhaps, right? And so that they are receiving from the community, right, at large. And then so getting them involved, like you said, with other like-minded individuals where they can connect in this way. So like you said, if the isolation is kind of a predominant factor, right, this is a way to kind of like bring them out and encourage this self-expression and healing in the arts. And I can't help but think, or say, for example, like if maybe they experience someone being impatient with them, right?
Mhm.
So then they're like, they might be impatient with themselves, right? Again, this goes for any of us, despite, right, our
Absolutely.
right, and this goes for any of us. And so, but still, like that may be that internal message, like, oh, I'm impatient with myself because others were impatient with them. So then
Mhm.
this could, like you said, it's, okay, well, maybe I can be patient with myself as I'm learning, right? And engaging in the learning process. And then that can then also kind of contribute to this building a sense of self-confidence, which in a kind of therapeutic realm, even if it's an unstated goal, right? I always like to think that like an increase in self-confidence is kind of like that would be a great place to get someone, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's through talk therapy or through art therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you touched on. I think it's something that we're seeing a shift in that makes me happy. Is you noted, the internalization of, getting negative feedback from the community and then internalizing it. And I think that happens with almost any community that isn't, how do I want to phrase this?
That
Any
might be
community that isn't the
marginalized, right?
norm, for
Mhm.
lack of a better term. You know, you see oftentimes internalized homophobia, internalized racism, internalized ableism. So
Exactly.
one of my many aims for this program is to be able to create that cross-cultural dialogue between disparate communities so that hopefully there's less inputs of those, discriminatory or behaviors coming back and forth, across all different kinds of communities. And we're able to, start to see each other for our assets. And we're starting to be able to see each other for what we contribute and what benefits we offer versus our limitations and our limitations.
Yeah, and something that was coming to mind for me too is that like when we think about kind of successful outcomes, right? Oftentimes, like family support can be part of that, right? And so, like you said, if they're coming in, if they have some family support, that's great too. But oftentimes, again, if they engaging in this community can be this added benefit of
Mhm.
support, right? To kind of help them, like you said, receive these counter messages that they might have received kind of growing up or in their past. The idea that I'm trying to get out here is that um, with them being engaged in the services in this kind of community aspect, maybe it's one of the places where they feel safe and
Mhm.
seen and understood. You know what I mean? And so that in and of itself can be a huge benefit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can speak from my personal experience. I don't think it's too dramatic to say that my arts education and arts classes saved my life from a mental health perspective, from
Is
everything.
that right?
Yeah, and I've seen it often in the programs that I've again been fortunate enough to be able to facilitate. A participant would come in from a different program, and their staff would, oh, they've just been behavioral all day, and whatever it may be. And then they come into their art program space and they're afforded a level of creativity and a level of freedom. And I like what you touched on earlier. There's no right or wrong. So if they come in just extraordinarily frustrated, not able to verbalize what they're dealing with, whether that be to a diagnosis or just they can't right now due to frustration or what have you. And you sit down and you give them, it can be as simple as a crayon and a piece of paper. And all they do is they scribble on that piece of paper with that crayon until the crayon is a nub.
Mm.
That's successful. That is a successful art intervention. Where someone came in and through the physical act of just wearing that crayon down to nothing, they were able to focus it there instead of through maladaptive behaviors, whether that be through violence, whether that be through being loud, whether that be through destruction of property, isolating themselves, shutting down. Um, it is another option to provide that safe space for them to express themselves, to share their perspective, whether that's their aim or not. I'm learning about what their day was like through the wearing down of that crayon.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It kind of gives them another place to go to express, right? Because like you said, especially if they're nonverbal, right, a lot of that expression is going to come out through behavior. And
Mhm.
so again, being able to have like a safe, contained space for that self-expression, it's pretty huge.
Huge.
And so I'm just kind of curious in your line of work with the arts, right? We always like to think about like success stories, right? I'd love to hear about success stories. So are there any kind of particular breakthroughs or success stories that you can share?
Yeah, so there's two that I really like to lean back on, and it's something that you mentioned in the introduction when you were introducing me. Thank you for that, by the way. Two of the things that I think I'm probably proudest of in my career thus far are two program expansion implementations that I was able to achieve in Arizona. One is a digital studio component. So we were able to get grant funding to provide more arts employment training in the digital realm. So we were able to get a computer lab set up, a large scale printer, and we were able to work with participants that were interested in graphic design. And the participants created all of the organization's internal collateral. They managed our social media site. They helped us update our website. And they were paid by the organization that I worked at to do so. So not only were they getting to express themselves creatively, they were making a paycheck. They were able to be more independent. And they were able to be highlighted for the skills and talents that they were able to bring. And they were so, both of those participants were so proud that they were able to say, like, I helped update the website. Like, not only are you receiving supports from the organization, but you are supporting the organization. There's a level of empowerment there that I think is often, unfortunately, not afforded to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I think there is a oftentimes good-natured, I have to truly believe it is a good intent to protect. And well, no, we're here to support them. They don't, allowing them to also support out is so important. I know that for myself, I can only offer my own perspective on this. If I was only being supported and not being offered an opportunity for my own self-agency and to feel valued and to feel important, that's going to severely diminish my self-confidence.
Yeah, and limit, yeah, our capabilities. Yeah, do that
Absolutely.
gave me goosebumps, right? Just thinking about that, and to even to think about the fact that, well, what if these programs weren't there and then they didn't have this opportunity? I mean, I have a lot of empathy for that, right? Like if people not typically having that avenue for self-expression and starting to tap into, oh, maybe they didn't even realize that they were good at this, and then they start doing it and they're like, hey, bam, I actually am.
Absolutely. Yeah, you never know until you try. And if we're here to support, we need to provide the opportunities for them to try and then occasionally fail like any of us and then try something else, try something different. Another opportunity that I'm again very proud of and thankful we were able to make happen, and we're starting to have conversations here at Ability Path around it, is a creative aging program. So it's a wonderful development. The life expectancy for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities over the last 40 years has exploded. It's been a while since I wrote this grant, so forgive me if my stats here aren't exactly correct, but in 1985, the average life expectancy of someone with Down syndrome, I believe, was like 35 years old.
Hmm.
Now, the average life expectancy of someone with Down syndrome is nearing 70. So this is
Wow,
an
practically double. Yeah.
amazing development. For people with Down syndrome in particular, though not exclusively, though, as they get older, the rates of Alzheimer's and dementia and other memory care diagnosis are significantly higher than for their neurotypical peers, sometimes 2 to 5 times, depending upon the study you're looking at, higher. And unfortunately, not just California, not just Arizona, our system nationwide is not prepared to provide supports to this population as they get older. So we were able to secure grant funding at a prior organization that I work for to partner up with 2 local organizations, one of which being Scottsdale Arts, to create a creative aging program. So this was specifically designed to work with people that had an intellectual or developmental disability, were getting older, and were showing signs of or had an actual diagnosis of Alzheimer's, dementia, or some other memory care issue. And I'm excited that we're having this conversation about something similar here at Ability Path. As I said, this is a relatively new, good development. But unfortunately, like I think any state system, and again, no matter what state you're in, lags behind the needs significantly.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is something that we're seeing explode, not just the participants themselves getting older. That means the parents are older. And how do we as an organization, as an individual, as an organization, and as a system step up and provide the supports that these people not only need, but in my opinion, deserve and legally are entitled to?
Yeah, because even like a side note, right? When you think about elder care in the States and you compare that to other countries,
Yeah.
right? Again, we could be lacking in that department. So that's even more fascinating news just from that standpoint alone around how we're tending to elder care.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a dire need, and hoping to see some movement on that sooner rather than later, because it's only going to become more dire as we as a system continue to delay the implementation of this. The elder population just keeps growing. So
it seems like the great thing about the arts is like, again, you're tailoring the service to what the client is looking for. So doesn't even really, it's not even necessarily that their presentation kind of limits what they're able to engage in, right? As long as they have the interest, right? Then or showing up and engaging, right? Then they really it's like a buffet of options just open to them, right?
Absolutely.
There's no limitations.
Yep, there's no limitations, and as you mentioned earlier, there's no right or wrong. So this is, while it is the program is being designed with some inspiration from my education background going to art school. It is different in the fact of there's no grading. There's no, you're not a success if you're not able to exhibit your artwork or if you're not able to sell your artwork. There's a movement within organizations that provide supports to people with disabilities, the progressive art studio movement. And I'm a believer in this movement, don't get me wrong. It's really focused on art creation to sell artwork. And again, that's a component of our program. Important, vital, valid. What worries me sometimes is there sometimes seems to be a little bit of a shift away from the arts for art's sake perspective, which is often where most artists sort of have their entry point into, arts education and wanting to be more involved in the arts. So it's important to me that we don't lose sight of, yes, the arts can mean jobs. Yes, the arts can mean fine gross motor skill development, all the things that you and I have spoken about so far today. Some things can just be enjoyable.
Right, right.
Beyond just, the intellectual and developmental disability field, I think so much of our society has become commodified and goal-oriented.
Yeah.
What's the next step? And I fear that we sometimes are losing sight of, this is fun.
I just want to sit down and play. Yeah.
Yeah. I get to paint all day. That's awesome. Like, that to me is so important. And if that is like all I'm able to hear from my participants, I'm still thrilled because we're able to offer them a space to come be safe, have fun, express themselves, and I'm happy.
Even on the central nervous system, right? Again, that can just have such a calming impact, right? And kind of regular self-regulation, again, kind of goal-oriented there, right? Word, but still kind of like just sitting down and just being able to kind of be with themselves and play. And in fact, if they are like trying to learn other skills, it's really important that they be in that mindset of play, because that makes the neuroplasticity, right, the learning process easier, right? If we're in this play mindset,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, it's something you touched on earlier in our conversation about how, and I forget exactly how you phrased it, which is unfortunate because it was really well stated, but you noted something along the lines of, through the arts programming and arts instruction, it doesn't always have to be this, we're going to see a 20% increase in fine and gross motor skill development. But through the arts instruction, you are going to see these things occur. I kind of joke with some of my colleagues and friends that the arts are sort of a sneaky way to skill build.
Yeah.
Because it's not like sitting down in math class and learning trig, but you can still
Yawn.
learn. Oh, exhausting. Yeah.
I never took trig.
My worst nightmare. But you can still learn geometry, but you don't necessarily know that you're sitting there learning geometry through utilizing shapes to create abstract art, for example.
Kind of the breakthroughs that you've witnessed. I can't help but think that, like you said, sometimes just seeing their demeanor change. Again, when we talk about how just coming in and sitting down and engaging in this play mindset or environment, how soothing that can be to the central nervous system, I can't help but think about how you might see even some changes in the people as they've kind of go throughout the course work.
Yeah, it can be really profound, and it can be sometimes as quick as just walking into the art specific place. When I was running programs that were sort of, I told you earlier, incorporated into other programs, that was how I got my start in the field. And the amount of times staff would walk in with a participant and, oh, get ready, they're having a day and they threw something and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes all it takes is walking into the art space and they know what they're there to do. Gone. Smiles, happy, helping, ready to go. I mean, it's not a miracle. Some days are harder than others, of course, for all of us.
Sure. Yeah. Just like any of us.
So, I mean, I've seen it on that quick level. I've seen it on a longer term, more profound level where, for example, I start all of my courses with sort of a morning or afternoon circle, depending upon when the course takes place. So participants come in and you go around and you ask, what did you do last night? Or how's your day been? What do you want to create today? Just to start that conversation and build a sense of community. And it's always something that's frustrated me. And it's honestly, in my opinion, somewhat dangerous, what can sometimes happen, where I'll ask a participant, oh, how's your day going? And they'll look directly to their staff. And then the staff will answer for them. And then, more questions, instantly to the staff. And through morning circles and practicing with the staff, you're great. I'm not asking you though, I'm asking, and then opening up opportunities for them to advocate for themselves through the arts. You'll notice when you ask them, 4, 5, 6 weeks in, how's your day? They'll answer for themselves. How are you feeling today? I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling like that. And it's so important because unfortunately, there's a lot of folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities that are, have difficulty advocating for themselves for one reason or another, whether that be through speech issues or what have you. And it creates an opportunity for them to be taken advantage of, frankly. And if we can utilize the arts for their many benefits, but if one of the main ones can be for self-expression, self-advocacy, and answering for themselves, that is hugely important. Unfortunately, you see really high rates of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect taken on people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I think oftentimes that can be because they can be taken advantage of because there is often such a dependency on their staff that they don't feel as though they've been empowered to express themselves. They look to their staff for the answer. And if that staff is not a good person, that is a dangerous situation.
Yeah, you say because they're used to be, I mean, they, has specific unique needs. So there is some kind of dependency, right? But to the point where, I imagine that even there's just this, even just a small change in being able to answer the question,
Yep.
right? I was thinking even just that small shift and change is huge.
Yep. And
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a shift in training on the staff level too, of, don't immediately answer for your participant.
Oh
Ask
yeah, yeah,
them,
yeah.
how was you tell them how your night was? What did we do? There's a partnership between the art instructor, the staff, and the participant that needs to take place to enable greater advocacy. And all three pillars of that stool need to be in alignment to really make that happen.
I see. Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I can't help but think that, when you say again, it's like, sometimes it takes a village, right?
Yep.
Again, for any of us, right?
Yep.
And so, but being able to have those safe, reliable pillars, right, can kind of start to contribute to this sense of kind of a safe space or trust. Again, I think those might even be kind of super important things for the clients to experience and feel when they are engaging in services, right? To
Yep.
feel like this is safe, I can trust this, right? I've got here people looking out for me. They've got
Yeah.
my back. Yeah.
It's game changed. It's foundational. If that doesn't exist, then very little, if any, of the other work can actually effectively take place.
Yeah, so awesome, Taylor. Thanks for, talking about how your important work with, individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities through this aspect of play and art and self-expression, right? It's this what do you say, multi-dimensional, right? Or lots of opportunities for clients to engage in your services. And again, like we were talking about, right? Especially when we're talking about working with vulnerable populations, right? And having services accessible and available to them so that they can engage in safe and trusting environments to encourage self-expression. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing to serve the community and the time that you took to kind of talk with us about it today.
Thank you, Dalton. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak about my program, Ability Path, and the importance of arts programs for the people that I'm fortunate enough to support. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Be sure to listen to our next episode as we explore various aspects of how to show up for ourselves and others by tending to our own mental and emotional well-being.